Hey, everybody.
Hey,
Welcome to the More Than Words podcast. You have Liz.
and Sarah.
It's a little late, but that's okay.
Listen,
All
I wasn't
right.
sure. Like, it's a lot of coffee. It's
It
a lot of
there's
coffee.
a lot happening on this side, but I think it's every Friday. I think because we record our podcast and that's my last major to do um
Yep.
for the week, and I get excitable, and my excitable goes to different levels. I also have Grogu with me today. Oh, that's my coffee cup.
So cute. So cute. Listen, first and foremost, if you all don't know, Liz and I haven't been able to talk very much because I am on the road doing uh, a program. So I am super excited. Uh, that's great. How is it messing with my girl time? So I'm going to spend this auntie moment, if you don't mind, Liz. Just catch you up, right? Like I'm gonna just have to catch you up. Like do's and don'ts. No, no. How about this? Reminders for returning to the road. That's how I want to use my auntie
I like that. I
moment.
think we're
You
going to
cool with
name
that?
that reminders for returning to the road. All right, tell me about it.
Okay, so let me just break it. Okay, so y'all, so listen, I'm in a smaller town, like in a little rural part of Washington State. So not too far from Seattle, but some things you just need to be reminded of, like, hey, so by the way, pack everything you think you would need for all the different climates that may happen in the area. Sounds very interesting and specific, but I definitely left my belt, right? So I was like, oh, I got everything. I got all the jackets. Okay. I got all my snacks. Like I got all the
Well, the
medicine, the
important
perks, the
stuff.
cuteness, the accessories. Okay, I got everything. Yeah, I got all the materials, you know what I mean? But one thing I left was a belt. So it's been a huge trek to be like, hey, y'all got belts here? Just going to different small shops. And they're like, no, we don't do that here. And I'm like, okay, so listen, why is a belt the hardest thing to find here? But have I found cool cuteness to give my friends and family? Absolutely. But a belt, no. So returning back to the basics, please make sure you have a checklist before you get on the road, specifically the smaller the ruler it is, you need to be definitely more intact. Second of all, don't think that you're gonna find your lip stain or lip gloss in any of the local stores. Okay, my chapstick decided to have a journey on an airplane. I'm not sure what that was about, but clearly jumped out of my pocket and laughed and was like, "Yeah, I'm good with this. I'm gonna go roll with somebody else." And so, anyway, trying to find those little things that just like make you feel like I'm here, I'm present, I'm there. So that happened. And then lastly, it was like connectivity. So I was like, okay, look, I need to make sure your hotspot is hotspotting because you just don't know what part of the mountain range you're gonna be on. And so you need to just make sure you come completely compared and contained to run everything that you need so that you can get the vibe. And don't forget your speaker because the music creates the vibe. And so I didn't forget that part. So I brought my speaker.
I'm
Everybody's
proud
like,
of
oh,
you.
it was nice
I'm
to
proud
have
of
a
you.
vibe. But let me just say, get your checklist back. Like if you haven't done your travel checklist in a while, get it together. Make sure your bare necessities is there and your fun to have. But at the end of the day, I have definitely been shocked back into like traveling. Like, okay, let me get a wallet that's better to grab this ID out because people keep asking for for hotel rental cars, etc. Right? Like, I mean, little things. Anyway, but that's catching you up, Liz, because that's all the like you get all these long texts, but in between it's just like, okay, so I've been walking around for like my lunch period, my lunch hour, you know what I mean? Looking for a belt.
That's a
Thanks
lot.
TikTok for the cheat sheet though. I
I
did
was
do
gonna
the
say, I'm like, did you go on
wrap
TikTok? Because I
around
would
the
have that would have been my next thing is like, did you go on TikTok and now
I
you have all new
no.
ideas for new things that you need
So
that you
for
didn't know you needed.
so you won't convert me to TikTok. So that's not gonna happen even on this show because she tries to do this privately. So this is an
I
extension of
don't,
that.
yeah, I actually don't have, I have a TikTok account, but I am very private on there because I hustle. I don't post anything. I'm not going to do it. Don't force me. But do I follow for organizational tips? Yes, I do. Do I follow for quick tips on how to do my makeup itch? Yes, I do. Do I do it for my dinners because I don't know what I'm cooking and I don't know how to just like create things like this? Yeah, I do. But I'm not going to go and post my dances. I'm not going to grace you all. with that joy and wonderfulness of it. But I'm glad that you're out there traveling again, Shara, because I miss it, to be honest with you. And I
Mm.
have definitely FOMO because you all are sending me food pics, and that makes me have FOMO.
Not me. Not no. Don't say we, because I won't be involved in that. I
You
do
took a
not
picture,
send
so
food
I'm adding you
pics.
into that you send food
I did not share
pictures.
it. No, I took one coffee picture because
You took
somebody
it.
did amazing art on it, but I did not share it. Someone else shared it on my behalf. Just FYI. Listen, I don't like food pics, y'all. This is one of those, once again, TikTok is not my spirit. I don't sign up for it. However, I do ask for tips for those who do use it, okay, because they already on there. Why not? Then second of all, this food thing, I'm a hostage. Like this situation is above me, like for real. They just keep sending these pics, and I'll be like rejecting it, sending mean faces and like all types of emojis that's like, no, stop, no. But they keep sending it. And I'm like, I was there when we ate it. Why do I need a picture? What? Okay,
I
let me
want
just
to
let it
capture
go.
the moment with the picture, but anyways,
But
so
you can't
what?
taste the food. You can't taste the food. So
I can imagine what it tastes like, and I feel like I'm
no,
there with
let's
you.
let's go to the guest. I can't with that. I just cannot with the imagination of the food. I cannot. I can't. Not today.
Okay,
Mm-mm.
well, so is it, I guess my last question for you, Shara, on your traveling, is it what you expected?
You know what? It it was and it was not. Like I think just being a Black girl, in a rural world, you have to be a little bit more vigilant and aware. I will say I had to up my friendliness in the smaller the town, the higher my friendliness goes, and I think that was I was prepared for, but I wasn't prepared, quite frankly, just to be, you know, in the space of how much time, now that I work all like you have to really balance out where you're going to work and feel safe. Like those
Yeah.
types of things I just, hadn't thought about in a while. So it's just those little adjustments like, oh, what does a work environment plus safety looks like? And I've had to think about this because I've been virtually for a while. And then, by the way, stylistically, I was like, okay, so I used to have my notes, like, how am I gonna be cute with my notes, like, so I can hit the points I want to hit. You know what I mean? Like, little stuff like that. People don't care. If you don't facilitate, this is probably like so annoying to you. So I'm so sorry. But yes, I'm
I
having a
know, but now
blast.
you have to think about like, am I going to print them? Am I going to have them on my iPad? Am I going to have them up there? Like, what am I going to do? And you also want to be environmentally friendly and not print them on like unrecycled paper or, whatever.
Period.
It's so much.
Disappearing ink. You
I
know what I
get
mean?
it.
Like,
I mean, I'm ready for it because of the FOMO, but I'm not ready for it, if that makes sense, because of all that you just said. I wouldn't want to be
yeah.
walking around the store. I mean, not that I've worn a belt for a lot. And that's another thing. I've not worn a belt. I was like, do we wear belts still? No, ma'am.
Yes.
No, jeggings is a thing, and I'm wearing them, and I don't care. Okay, I have to wear
Li-
Spanx for when we do our events, and that's as
yeah.
far as
Thanks
I'm
is
gonna
a must.
go. Okay.
Liz, let's talk about your hoops. The hoops be asking for the belt though. Like you gotta put it around the. I'm just gonna let you talk about it later. Like I'll show you like a diagram. Maybe that's what we use the pictures for. Helpful things like reference points. That's not about taste and sensory. Okay. All right. Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Share. I'm so glad that you're safe. I'm glad that you're enjoying
Mm.
this journey, and I love that you always find the positive things in everything that you're doing. It brings me joy and it brings me happiness that, that you're enjoying yourself. You're like, I'm just living my best life and
Right.
period.
Period. I'm already here. I'm the plus one. Add me to the city council, honey. I'm here. Okay.
We did the city council. Right. So we're going to go ahead and get into our guest because we have an amazing episode today. And we have an amazing guest. I'm so happy to introduce this person. So her name is Jessica Bantom. And before I tell you on what she does, I want to tell you how I met her and why I wanted her to be on our show. Okay. So I have been, let me take you back months ago. I had been fangirling. I don't know how we got connected. It was probably CDI. So she's a CDI alum. And we got connected that way on LinkedIn. And I fangirled all her posts. I was like, yes, hit like, comment, da 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 da. Next post, yes. I mean, it's like she knew what I needed in that very moment. Yes, I know she didn't post things for me. I get it. But when I read them, I felt like it was for me. I felt like she was like, Liz, let me reach in there. And so I learned so much from her posts, and I just absolutely loved them. So then fast forward to October when we did the CDI symposium, right? And we hadn't, I mean, I'd never met any of my CDI alums. We did everything virtually. So all of my like CDI best friends, family, um, were virtual friends and family until to that point, right? And and I had met her during the event. I was like, oh, I love her. One, she's gorgeous. Two, her style is on point. Three, like she's incredibly just a fountain of knowledge, and she's captivating. As soon as you meet her, you're just like, I just want to sit here and talk to you all day long, right? Then fast forward after the event, after we've been awake and my Spanx was too tight and I had to take them off, and I had my eyelashes also had fallen off at this point. Even though Chelsea tried the beauty project, Chelsea tried sticking them back on, but you know she didn't put them on to begin with. Okay, I put my own eyelashes on. She was trying to, you know, fix the situation, but they have fallen out. I mean, it was like floating on one side. Anyways, I had taken all that off and I was just me. I was just Liz. And I had been sitting at dinner. I was waiting on Shara because she took forever because she was putting her next outfit. And I was sitting next to someone and we were just chit-chatting all dinner long. I was like, I love this person. Who are you? Then I found out it was Jessica. I was like, oh my God, this fan. Probably thought it was a little awkward. But that's how we met. That was our whole story of how we met. And I knew she's such an impactful leader. She's an amazing coach. And then she started what we connected in is she has a book out called Design for Identity. I don't want to disclose anything about it until because that's going to be our topic for today. But as you all know, Mama D is in the design industry, right? So she has her own shop and makes her own. She has a workshop for draperies and all that stuff. So it's something I grew up with. That I mean, I was literally growing up in her shop, sitting there as she created these beautiful pieces, and seeing the design for identity piece from Jessica's point of view was so impactful and so incredible. So I knew that I wanted to have her on the podcast. So I want to bring Jessica on. That was a
Drum
long-winded hello.
roll, drum roll, hey. First of all, Jessica, that's the first time I heard that full story. And she gave me that little shady part talking about I was taking forever. It's fine. See what happened. See what happened when people give space. I gave space that day. Jessica, we're so happy to have you. Oh my goodness.
I'm so glad to be on today. And I love you all's energy. Like I was sitting there off camera cracking up. And Liz, by the time we had that dinner, my specs were killing me too. Cause this getting back out in the world thing, I was like, I
Yes.
didn't have to do this at home. At home, I was in my leggings and my shirts and my earrings.
Nobody tells you. Nobody tells you about those fakes. Listen, that fakes is a talk. You'd be like, and so y'all, you gonna act up. Don't act up today. We coming, we gotta be together. Okay. Listen,
Literally, we gotta be
Jessica.
together.
Jessica, listen, before we ever personally met, Liz has just been singing your praises. Like anytime we've gotten in a conversation where your book, which I won't give any additional details, but when your book has been relevant, like it just has opened her eyes. And it is both of us have just been super curious. But when I say fangirl in life for real, I'm glad she didn't embarrass us when y'all was in person because she was like, this, she like forwarded me everything. I'm like, girl, okay, so let's just have a healthy boundary here, okay? So Jessica, let's let the audience learn about you. So first and foremost, you know, here at the podcast, we always start off with like, what are your top three dimensions that you lead within the world, so people can know how you identify.
Okay, so I will say it's always interesting being a DEI professional talking about identity. I share in a lot of groups. I am Black first, I'm a woman second. And I would actually say probably my third identity that's most important to me is I'm a child of God.
Mm.
So that's me.
Listen, when you put those faces in there, you be like, and period. Okay, let me
That's
tell
all
you
you
where I am.
need. That's all you
Okay.
need.
Well, when you leave with those dimensions, Jessica, like what are some of those stereotypes that come up? Because I think, once again, we ask this question, right? So, because right now people assumptions is popping up. So we got to just let them go through the journey of hearing how people experience them.
Yes, and it's also interesting in the context of doing DEI work. I will say, first of all, that has made me become a lot more aware of my identity and how I show up in the world, and how I've even been programmed to think of myself, and how people have been programmed to receive me, and how I've been programmed to think people are receiving me. I know that's a lot to say, but it's very interesting. Having to talk about it so much has really made it really top of mind for me. And I do sometimes wonder what people think when I step into a space. When I first started doing DEI work and getting my things out online, getting my blog posts up and things like that, um, I wondered, I was like, how are they going to take this from a Black woman? And in this, over the time that I've actually also been doing this work, I decided to go natural. So I was like, I wonder if having my hair like this is also going to impact how I'm perceived. Like all of these things go through my mind. And it actually was interesting too in a conversation recently with other Black female DEI practitioners. One of them asked me, do you think people listen to you more because you're light skinned? Do you think white
Mm-hmm.
people receive you better because you're light skinned?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, there's a whole other thing. Thanks for throwing that on the list. But I mean, these are just very real things. You think of how we show up, and um, there's the awareness, but then also we can't let that kind of hold us back from being who we are. Ultimately, I'm aware of those things. I, am a very generally self-aware person, but it's still, I'm me, and I'm just going to show up and be me.
Here, listen, just tell them, like, listen, I showed up and I brought all these things, so just enjoy them. That's what I love it for you. And I listen, hair, and we know we ain't gonna go down that road, but I'm just saying that stuff really matters. It's about that appearance bucket on that diversity wheel. Like, people make a lot of judgments and labeling as soon as you walk in the door because they try to figure out should I run or should I stay, right? Like, so all of that shows up. But at the end of the day, I'm so glad that you first and foremost have been so confident, one, about all the things that you show up with, specifically around faith. Like sometimes people be like, well, people just need to know because how I act. I'm like, no, I want to say it out loud. Like, look,
Yeah,
this is what we
absolutely.
do. And also showing up in that way so other people feel the confidence to be like, this is me, all of this, right?
Yeah.
Colorism, just shout out to you for talking about colorism. Listen, Liz and I got that on the list to do. Believe me, if anybody out there listening in, people have been running away from this conversation. We just found one person
I mean,
recently.
You know,
We
we've,
scour
yeah.
people to have this conversation. But I will say, depending on what time you catch me in the year, some people had that same comment and some people don't. So I'll be like, okay,
right.
listen. Now I'm giving people the distraction with the ponytail. Like, look, we can't. If you're not ready to have this conversation for the world to hear, for us to really talk about it transparently, then we're not ready. But at the end of the day, I can't control this right here. So let's talk about how it shows up. But it's a deep conversation. I'm glad you brought it up because it does show up quite a bit. And whenever them vulnerable moments when y'all ready, we ready.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting. It's actually come up in the context of conversations I've had with people from the Philippines and from South Korea recently too. And I mean, it's so global. It's so global. But I know, like you said, that could be a whole other podcast.
And
Whole other episode.
Jessica, I really want to acknowledge your bravery for one, like showing up so publicly that way, because when you were saying, oh, that's another component that I have to consider, that's another thing that I have to consider. I mean, that can be very taxing on a person. And we've heard that oftentimes, right? Where, the microaggressions that you face in public environments and workplaces, it can be so exhausting. And it's like you already have work, you already have a family or responsibilities or whatever you may have. And on top of that, you have all these ands on top of it. So for you to show up in this space and saying, hey, y'all, this is who I am, and I'm brave and I'm here. And yes, I'm aware that there's some things that some people might not be okay with, or I might need to consider, but I'm here. This is who I am, and accept me, right? So I kudos to you for having so much bravery and showing up that way.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And thank you all. Look at the platform you're creating for even having these conversations. So back to you two.
It gets scary. Trust me, there's some conversations,
Oh,
especially Sharon. I'm like, oh my God, I have a fan underneath me because, it can be a little scary. But so, Jessica, we want to know why we're here for. I want to know more about your upcoming book, Design for Identity. First of all, it's a beautiful book. Okay. We will post it on our Instagram. I love it. I resonate so much with it. I ordered my copy. My mom has it and she's like, oh, I'm going to read this one. But this book in your website about it, it discusses the responsibility of designers to honor and incorporate diverse identities of historically excluded people in their work. Tell me a little bit more about the book and what makes this topic so important for you.
Yeah, so it's really been interesting how many things kind of align for the book to happen. So I've been involved in the design industry, in interior design specifically, for about 15 or so years at this point. In addition to having exposure to other design disciplines like graphic design, product design through different means. And what really struck a chord for me was, of course, in the summer of 2020, the design industry, design firms, just like basically every business, I felt like we're making all these statements. All of a sudden, they're having their social justice awakening. And there are all these proclamations being made. We stand with you. We're against racial injustice, et cetera, et cetera. And, as I think most people with lived experience, especially in America, were probably just like, so you're just seeing this, but okay, we're going to run with it. Your eyes are open. Let's see what you do with it. And looking, we got into 2021. Now I'm looking around and I'm not seeing much that's different. And I had a conversation with another a designer in a global firm who told me that in her firm, now they have a whole page on the website about DEI. It's become the buzzword, but when it comes to day-to-day practice, the only thing that was different is that they were using images of more diverse people in their renderings. That's not impact. That's not changing things. That's not changing the day-to-day experience of the people in the organization or the customers and any of the outcomes. So there, like I said, it was a lot of things that kind of came into the formation of the book, but I had also participated in 2021 in a diversity and design conference. And a professor talked about, in one of the sessions, a professor talked about a course she was teaching called Design Justice. And I was like, oh, hold on. I was like, are we talking about it? I was like, I haven't even heard those words together before. So I got in touch with her and I was just like, oh, there's some good stuff here. And then I was like, why aren't we talking about it on a broader scale? So all the ideas came together and I was just like, we need to really start talking about for design students, also for practicing designers and for leaders of design firms. We need to really take a critical look at the design process and insert opportunities to start talking about the cultural identity of our customers. Because this to me was just like the next step. So a lot of DEI, number one, focuses a lot on internal operations within organizations. Of course, they love talking about recruiting, like this is going to fix it. You need to talk about retention, but that's a whole other thing. Caring for the people who are there. But that was a lot of the DEI conversation goes to that, not among practitioners, but I'm saying mostly among clients and what I experience. Not that that's insignificant, but it's just a piece of the puzzle, like talking about how we show up internally within organizations. I think that the next step is then to talk about how we apply these values in the work that we do as well. So not just saying, having our statements saying, like, look, we have like 3 brown people in leadership roles, on your leadership page, like, what are you really doing? So I started thinking about the design discipline in general and the design practice. And like I said, I really wanted to introduce a tool, some kind of mechanism that would force the conversation about identity in the process. And it's intentionally not, it's not the book, the subtitle for the book is How to Design Authentically for a Diverse World. I don't want people to think that this is like recipes for like how to design for Black people, how to design for gay people, how to design for people of certain religious background. That's not what this is about. It is about creating the conversation with customers to say, what about your identity would you like to see celebrated in this space, this product, this piece of clothing that we're designing for you? Opening that dialogue with customers and continuing the dialogue throughout the process to make sure that your designer's interpretation of what they said actually does resonate with them, and it is something that honors them as opposed to your interpretation of it. And then also in parallel with that, having the conversation with your colleagues, having the conversation among design teams to say, are we getting this right? Do we have the right people in the conversation? Are we picking up on the same things? Are there other resources that we need to consult to make sure that we're doing this in a way that honors the people that we're working with? Introducing points where we're saying, okay, we think we got it, but we want to make sure with you. And just being intentional so that this becomes a normal part of the conversation. And it's not how we're taught to design as students. That's why, like I said, design students and design educators are a big audience for this book. And it's not standard practice in design. And I will say, I can't say that this isn't happening in pockets. I don't know all of what's happening across the entire design industry. But even in saying that, if that is happening some places, we need to amplify it. There needs to be a bigger dialogue about how to do this, what's working, what's not, what should we try? How can we collectively as a profession, as an industry, as disciplines, make this cement this into how we do what we do.
I love this. I mean, it is such a huge undertaking, and having the experience of seeing my mom deal with multiple designers because she was the shop and they brought their designs in there. And I'm trying to think right now, like, ooh, that's going to be hard, but it's not impossible. And I love, you're in order to change systems, you need a system to change a system. And I think starting off with this and using a coach approach for it, for design, is so powerful and impactful. I mean, I love this conversation.
Yeah, I think also just for the most of the listeners who signed up, it was like, oh, I'm thinking about like a physical space of change, like the actual environment, because that's how we're taught, right? We're like, what's
Yeah,
the environment? Like what we need to be creative. But like to Liz's point, the conversation to create the actual outcome or whatever the physical pieces or the feel and all of that, we don't spend a lot of time on what that looks like because, to be honest, we've had clients who've been in like different spaces of design, even print or advertisement or furniture, or, like just big manufacturing companies or like firms. And ideally what has happened is, when we come in that space, we're like, well, why are we the only ones here that's of diverse identities? It's like, are they, I mean, how low do you go? Like, how low do you go until you find somebody who's gonna be like, so listen, that modern that idea that you have really won't fill the gap in the community you're trying to put that product in. Like, seriously. Like, like,
Yeah.
oh.
And it's my hope, honestly. Well, one of the things that one of the questions that I repeatedly have asked myself in design spaces, even from the classroom on, was if designers design for everybody, how can there be so little diversity in the profession?
Come
Because I was
on.
looking around like, as a Black woman, who in here is designing for me and on what
Right,
basis?
right.
So this also goes to the whole point of why diversity is important in the design industry,
every
which
space.
honestly I think is at this point about across disciplines like 10% global majority.
Right.
Really does not equate to the reality, mirror the reality of the makeup of the world.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the fact that we still have to call this out, it's like, okay, y'all been doing this for a long time. We back here, get those textbooks and that curriculum updated because guess what? You're teaching people to be a part of the system versus bringing what's happening in the world to more of a co-creation and a conversation of what versus what's existing. But I guess, to your point, you started talking about a little bit about the outcomes you wanted for the book. What was, just what were they? Like what were like when you wrote this book, you was like, this is what I want this to serve.
Yeah. And what well, one of the things was I want this to become a required text for all design programs across disciplines, period. Just because, like I said, this is not an intentional part of any discussion, any design program. Well, not any, I'm saying it needs to become a standard part of the design education process. So that is one goal. And another, well, even in the context of schools and student and the experience of design students, I want them to get comfortable having the conversation. I want them to expect that this is part of the conversation I will have once I get out in the world with my customers. I want them to be the ones who demand it when they go into firms. I'm having interviews with more junior people now who are asking the question, what are you doing about DEI in this organization? And in a lot of instances, I bet a whole lot of places, they don't have many good answers. They don't have solid answers. And then, moving on to the design firms, this could be an answer to that question. If they say we have adopted these principles, these practices, or even if they say we're in the process of it, that's still a lot more than what we're seeing right now. And in the design industry, I want this to be a standard part of the conversation. This should be a standard part of the design process. Just like we made space for sustainability, just like we made space for ADA, all very relevant things. We need to make space for the broader conversation about identity. And also, and the importance of it isn't just about the service we're providing to people, because as designers, we provide a service that, to me, that is our main role. This is also about making that space and saying we value the lived experience. We value those perspectives because we need them. We can't manufacture them. We can't make them up. We need them from those people so we can relate to the people that we're designing for. And from a business standpoint, to not do that is leaving money on the table.
Right. So I think for those who this is not there, so I'm not this conversation is a little reach for me because I'm not in. First of all, I can't hang curtains. I know that's irrelevant, but I just got to put the context out there. Like, this how deep that gap is for my understanding. But for those individuals who are like, well, this should obviously be something that could be easily put into curriculum. I would want to just say, if you're in that space of academia, this is first and foremost, this is your challenge to go ahead and make sure that this conversation is happening wherever your university is. And then for those of you like, oh, this should be easy. Listen, there is nothing easy when you talk about identity, diversity, equity, inclusion. Look what's going on in all the other states where there is literally like a fight for who gets to control how we educate our students and how we educate at public universities. So this is not an easy conversation, but this is the opportunity that we have to say, look, if you want to influence how, first and foremost, I'm sure this is a tractable conversation for people who have a diverse experience too, who want to be like, hey, I didn't think about this as an opportunity for my career and for my workforce, but now I'm interested. That's one attraction. But the second part is, think about how many people have been in this work for so long, and now they're trying to identify, like, what's the future, what's the new customers, what are the spaces that I can now get in that was untapped to me, because this is really co-creating the future of what design can look like. So I'm super excited. Everybody here to charge. Here to charge.
Well, and I think it's so, this is why this year, Shara, we talked about DEI in places that most people wouldn't have thought that it should be in. In reality, it should be everywhere. Everyone needs to be about it. Everyone needs to have the awareness of it. It's not exclusive to anybody, right? It needs to be everywhere. And I often think back about, in this conversation that we're having, is I'm curious to hear from my mom, coming as an immigrant from Mexico, being the one creating these designs that more than likely weren't, obviously they're not for her, but she's the one creating them. And as an artist, because it is her artistic creativity she's putting her energy into these designs. I wonder, like, how she thought about that in situations where it may not have been in line with her own value system or her own background, and obviously for her, she didn't have the choice, right? She's like, I need money. I got to put food on the table. I'm going to do what I got to do.
Right.
Yeah. And design in any way. So I think it's important. Yes, it is a hard conversation, but this is a perfect example of why it needs to be everywhere, because, you know, inclusion is action. It's in everything that we do, and it needs to be brought to light in these kind of spaces. One of the things that I'm curious about, I know you talked about your outcome, only because I just always love to ask these on authors. I want to know about your experience and journey when, as you were creating this book. Like, what did you learn, A, about yourself, and then B, about the actual design process?
Very good question. So it was definitely a process. I will say that I had not envisioned myself writing this book until probably 3 months before I actually started it. And there were just a lot of things that were happening. But when I did decide to write it, I was just like, I'm going to do it. And it was interesting because a friend connected me with a book coach who I didn't even know book coaching was a thing. I'm so glad I met her. But she kept me accountable during the whole process. And when we first started, she was like, I do 6-month contracts. Sometimes authors will finish in the 6 months. Sometimes they need to extend. I was like, with my financial situation, we're going to finish this in 6 months. So I made that decision. This is what's happening. But I did learn a lot about myself in the process. One, I think I hadn't given enough credit to flexing that writing muscle by doing my blog. I had started that in the summer of 2020. So I had gotten in that practice of communicating, and I like to communicate concisely because I know people don't have huge attention spans, number one. Number two, I don't like writing for very, very long periods of time or writing lengthy things. And I also knew in writing this book, I was writing it for designers, and designers are more visual than like, you know, I'm going to sit down and read some 300-page book. And I also appreciate that myself as a designer. So I learned a lot about the value that a lot of past experiences brought to that moment, and how the things that you've done that you never thought you'd use again or were not valuable skills, or like, oh, I have this job, I'll just do this for now, but I don't really see it doing anything. Everything I've done in my entire career came out somehow in either the creation or the content of that book. And I will also say that I learned a lot about my faith. My faith grew and developed in the process of writing it, because ultimately I feel like this book is basically a message that it was sent through me to get out into the world. It's not Jessica's thoughts. It's not all purely Jessica. Oh, I'm this genius. I really think this was a message that I was intended to deliver. And that alone gave me a lot more confidence to do it. I know a lot of authors I know some people who have had a finished book on like a finished manuscript on their shelves for years because they're scared about getting it out there, which I completely get. But I think, I think it was my faith that made me feel confident in saying, this just needs to go. Like, this is intended to be in the world. It's intended to be in the world now, and just go for it. And I will say, I learned a lot about the the whole process as I was doing this, including the publishing process. But that could also be a whole other episode. But it was all worth it.
So in other words, a Jessica Bantom publishing company is coming next. Okay, you heard it first on More Than Words.
I don't know, but I will put something out in the universe, actually, since you brought up a publishing company, because Questlove just launched his own publishing company this week. And I'm just going to put it out there, maybe second book. I don't know.
We don't know.
We're both from Philly, so I don't know. Put it out there in the universe.
At Questlove, honey. At Questlove.
That's right.
At Questlove when we launch you, okay?
Yes. I really love that, because I coach a lot of people who are transitioning in careers, and they always say, I always hear this so many times. It's like, well, how am I qualified to do this? Or what qualifications do I have if I'm shifting careers or changing from two different disciplines? I love that you do the DEI work, and I love that you do design, and you found a way to mold them together, right? You didn't forget about all those tools of all that experience. And and people often say like, oh, well, I did that way back when, and I did it for a company or XYZ or whatever it may have been. And the thought process is what I find is a lot of people say those skill sets and experiences stay with that company as if they're the owners of it. No, ma'am, you are the owner of that tool and experience and your skill set. You own it, you take it with you wherever you go. And it's something that is just another little tool set on your little belt here that you have, and it's a cute belt, right, Cher? Like a little cute belt.
Always. Listen, give me that belt right now. Give me that belt right now. But I will say, yes, you're absolutely right, Liz. Like, seriously, most times it's just that validation and support that you can do it, right? Like, I mean, I think we take for granted sometimes like that disconnect from when you were a child and there's a lot of support and not that's not everyone's experience, but ideally there's a clear path that you have to follow to achieve like a high school diploma or to go across like to get a certification or something, whatever the thing you sign up to is very clear. There's a system that supports it. But once you become an adult, right, and your dreams are beyond all those spaces that's been like systematically supported, it is really one of those mindset shifts about how do I create the purpose, right? Or where do I grab from to get that purpose, whether it's faith or a mindset or so like someone was talking to me about tribe, right? Like what's your tribe? Your tribe that's supporting you and bringing new things out of you, right? And so those are some of the things that I think we just often just don't take enough time to acknowledge the need and the relevance of that as you get to a space where you're like, okay, no one's holding me accountable. I mean, like, there's nobody like, okay, so in 4 years, we're gonna be checking on you. Like, where you at? Where you at?
We have to value our own experience. Even if somebody has an idea for a book and there's already something out there about it, it could be 10,000 of books out there already about. No one's going to tell your story. No one's going to explain those things through your lens. No one else has walked in your shoes. So your perspective is valuable. And honestly, and your perspective could be the one that could change somebody else's life. That you never know how all of this is going to work. And I will say, God has put me on the path He's put me on. If you look at my resume, you'd probably be like, that's interesting. But the thing is, like I said, it's all come together. I take, you talk about transferable skills. I am the most transferable skill, like the biggest ambassador for it you will ever hear. I will talk about what I've done in my sorority at work. I will talk about what I did in volunteering with a board when I'm talking about another group that I want to be involved with, because it's all valuable experience. It's all made me. If you see value in me, then you have recognize that it's all from everything that I've experienced professionally and personally, and this is me, and I don't need you to validate that because I know there's value in my perspective. So I think that's what we need to just kind of keep in mind, because I know you hear imposter syndrome all the time, and I know, and I sat there sometimes like, maybe there's a reason there isn't another book like this because maybe there's not the interest, or maybe some other people pursued it and it is their manuscript sitting on their shelf. But I was like, but no, this is my thing to do. So regardless, it can flop, it could be big. I don't know. I did it. And I would hate to sit there and look at something and say, that was a great idea. I wish I had done it. I wish I had done it. I wish I had done it. At least I can say I tried, and I gave this more than I ever thought it would have taken out of me. And I'm just glad that I did it.
Oh, Jessica. First of all, I keep forgetting that I'm a host of the More Than Words podcast and that I'm another auntie. I feel like I'm just a guest. I'm a listener. I'm the audience here. I'm getting so much like, thank you, Jessica, for sharing that story and your process and everything like that. Seriously, and I think this is why you and I connected on such a deeper level. We had Sada from CDI on our prior episode, and it is so true, Shara, to your point on like finding your tribe, on finding your community, finding people that are like you, but are also different than you and that push you to be better. If your community of people are not inspiring you to be better, to saying you don't have to be this one little box that someone's put you in, right? You can be all these skills that you have brought in. And if you can carry behaviors from childhood that may or may not serve you as an adult, why can't you carry the good things with you, those skills, those experiences, those tools? And why can't I do it all? Why can't I be a designer, an accountant, an entrepreneur, a leader, a coach, a DEI? I can do it all. That tells you I am not afraid of anything.
Exactly. And I love you talking about like your younger self, because a colleague of mine, we joke about this a lot. She was like, I would have loved to have met little Jessica. And I'm like, oh, she's still in there. She is still in there. It's, the world tries to take it away and like to make you forget the boldness that you had, the confidence, that just the joy that you had when you were little before everything started trying to tear you down. But little Jessica's happy. Little Jessica wrote that book.
I love that. I love
Well,
that. We'll have a whole
well,
other conversation about that one. But yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
we need that. First of all, let me just say, let's acknowledge those inner child. Look, it's not just terminology. It's a real fun person who got some courageousness in there that's going to speak through your spirit. But I'm curious. Okay, so I know. Okay, remember I told you I can't hang no curtains, but I have been a part of organizations who have built buildings. Right, there's been this huge shift, right, to like let's build a workplace that makes everybody want their house. Like, that, like, okay, mid. But at the end of the day, I guess, there's people listening out there that are making these huge investments. They want the people to come and have this sense of community a couple of times a week. Hint, hint, for those of you thinking about it. Okay. And then what would be like some of the key things or key conversations you think they should be having or considering or implementing, that if they wanted to read more about it in your book, that this would be the way in which they could know for sure that this is something that they should choose?
That's a great question. It's come up in a lot of the different workplace kind of spaces I'm into. One thing I would say that's a consistent theme in the book is talk to your staff, talk to your workforce, and ask them literally, what would make you want to be here? Now that we've been able to have the flexibility of being at home, if people have religious practices that they have to, engage in during the day, they can do it without thought. If they have different dietary requirements, they can store their food however they do. If they have, different abilities and they have different ways of doing things that they've worked out at home, talk to them about how you can replicate that in the office. That's been one of the things about being home. Like being home, I think made us probably appreciate how much we can be ourselves at home. So there should be an intentional conversation about, well, what would make this space someplace you would want to be in? And it goes beyond just literally like things to practically do your work. Gets into things like imagery. If I walk into my space and there's all kinds of people who look nothing like me up on the walls or in this picture or wherever, there are quotes by people that have nothing to do, like I have no similar background to, those are also not welcoming signals to me. Those are things that could be shifted. The whole and looking at things like mother's rooms. I talk a lot about specialized kind of spaces in interior design in the context of this conversation. And people have told me, yeah, there's a mother's room in my building, but it doesn't have a sink. Who was involved in the design of that space? Or there's like a prayer room slash something else. It can't be slash. If you're really trying to like create a specialized space for that, make it the specialized space so that when people come in there, they know what they're there for. There's space. If they have like a prayer mat, there's a space to store that. It's quiet. If they need quiet, it is intentionally like soundproofed. You know what I mean? Like make the spaces really the spaces, and don't just take an old closet, put a new sign on the door, and act like you've done something for people. Talk to your workforce, ask them what's going to make you really want to be here. That's like the simplest thing. I talk to leaders all the time and they always want to talk about, well, what are other people doing? Let's benchmark. What's this, what's our competitor? You shouldn't care. You have your people. You are responsible for the care of your people. Talk to them.
Yes.
And the thing is, why this book even needed to be a thing, why I literally have discussion questions in the book, is because people are afraid to have the conversation. Now, if I give you literally, I give you the questions, and now getting to the answers, or even sometimes saying the questions out loud, not always going to be easy. Like just like you said, Sharon, like none of this is necessarily going to be comfortable, but you got to do it. You got to do it, and the opportunities outweigh, to me, the risks of us continuing to not do anything.
Yeah, you can't, the world is changing, and you know, you
Yeah.
have to decide what your own impact that you want to have. We always talk about legacy on our podcast, and it's like
Oh,
you really need to think about your legacy and the impact that you want to have as a leader, as someone who runs an organization, because the world is shifting and you're either going to get on board or you're not.
we're on the same page, because that is literally one of the coaching questions, because the book also holds in coaching questions. What, as a designer, what do you want your legacy to be? As a
Yeah.
design leader, a design firm leader, what do you want your organization's legacy to be? And there really needs to be some deliberate thought given to that, because it
And
can be different. It could be different than what we see around us today.
And PS, let's call to the carpet like the building contract companies, like the construction companies and the inspectors. Like, why that's not on your list? Like, because I'll tell you right now, if somebody listening, they're like, oh, we listen to the building contractor and this is what they say. No, they have a checklist. And when did the last time they revised that list to make a decision about this? Yes, you may do all your OSHA standards, all your safety standards, but at the end of the day, when someone's telling you there needs to be a sink in this mother's room, well, that's not necessarily something somebody checking off a list. That's something about the experience you want to create. So yes. And PS, I just while out because I'm passionate about this, up your number of mothers parking spaces. Y'all already know. I get it. Y'all got the EV parking spaces. Great. Get your credits. Great. But let me just say, up your number because we here and it's a lot of us. And yes, if you want us to be there and we want us to go through all the many experiences, that's not just motherhood, at the fullness, but it could be those journey to motherhood or those journeys after motherhood. PS, including menopause, like them spaces are necessary. So stop trying to act like they don't belong there. Okay, let's stop. Period. Period.
And if there's anybody out there that can have and wants to have a menopause
Okay, I'm sorry, Liz.
conversation,
You don't have to get on that because being a client.
No, I get it.
yeah, no, like please reach out to us because we want to have that conversation. Absolutely, 100%. Well, Jessica, usually we finish our episode with a moment of reflection. And so I think for me, what I've learned today is I've learned so much. Like I said, for a minute there, I forgot I was hosting it, and I ended up becoming a guest, not a guest, an audience member. I've learned so much about this, and it kind of reaffirmed my whole thought about that DEI, inclusion, people work. It's everywhere, and it's everywhere that there is people, and so we also need to think about what is that legacy that we want to leave in our spaces. How what do we want our next generation to focus on and to deal with, and et cetera. So I just want to thank you for coming on our show and gracing us with your story and honoring us with everything that you bring to the table. So Shara, what do you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I'm like, first and foremost, grab the book, right? And use the title as your question. Like, listen, are you designing for identity? And if you don't know where to start with this book, start with Jessica's Instagram and get some help. And if you are not in a space where that is where you have your power, then get it to the person who has the power, control, and influence to do it. And quite frankly, like we have to start thinking about and holding other people, holding everyone accountable for being inclusive for the spaces that they're creating. Otherwise, then we're supporting the system. So let's do our part to disrupt and inform and encourage people to be more inclusive if you really want to have a space that everyone feels a sense of belonging and connections to, if you want to use it that way. And if not, just enjoy a good virtual conversation, period. Like, hello, that's what we're here for then. Okay. Jessica, any closing remarks from you before we wrap up?
This is just amazing, and ditto to everything you all are both saying. I was just sitting there like, yes. No, I thank you all for your support and for getting this message out there. And that's these conversations do my heart good, because I think all of us in DEI need this from each other to keep each other going too. So I will end it with that and just thank you all for what you're doing too.
Thank you, Jessica. Well, we will be posting this soon on Instagram, on YouTube, on all major podcast platforms. Go buy Jessica's book, okay? Bring generational wealth to Jessica and her family. Thank you very much. And we'll also post Jessica's website in our bio as well, so you can get in contact with Jessica if you want, speaking engagements or whatever it may be, so she can talk about her book. So, all right, y'all. Oh, and visit us at morethanwordspodcast.com. See y'all later.